From the new recording lair located deep beneath the Wine and Spirit store in Ephrata, Pennsylvania.
You're listening to the Masonic Lite podcast.
Studio 665 presents Masonic Lite podcast. This show is recorded by Masons, for Masons. It is for entertainment purposes only. And please, no wagering.
This podcast is not endorsed by any Grand Lodge, and the ridiculous ramblings of the hosts are their own. And now, here's your host.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 62.
62
of Masonic Lite Podcast. And if you're from Australia, you might know that we are one episode ahead of our friends down under. So let's get to work, boys.
I think Jack quit.
I think Jack got a real job, I think is what happened. My name is Jack Harley. I am past master of Ephrata Lodge 665 and a member and leader of various other tribes. And with us today are
Jason Lewis, Senior Deacon, Lodge number 43, and anything else I can make eye contact with.
Jeff Moyer, past master of Lodge number 43, and filling in for Pete Ruggieri this evening.
Larry Maris.
And
Ted Schick.
And Ted Schick. Ted Schick is a professor of all kinds of crazy stuff at Muhlenberg College, and we will talk about that later. Larry, you're asleep. You're done.
No.
And those of you who are watching on the interwebs, it's really comical to see Jeff Moyer trying to fill Pete Ruggieri's chair. He looks like Edith Ann. It's kind of funny.
Just call me Repeat.
So Repeat. All right. In our lodge, we have three Todds. We have Todd, Fake Todd, and Retod. So Repeat works here. So we're going to start tonight, as we usually do, going around the horn, talking about what we did Masonically for the last couple of weeks. And let's see, who should start the Wheel of Fortune? Let's start with Jeff Moyer.
Okay.
Who's looking at his calendar?
Yeah, I'm looking at my calendar. I can't remember what I did 10 minutes ago. I had a Constantine Conclave dinner last Wednesday in September. 8th degree rehearsal at the Valley of Reading. I'm the degree master. Sooner or later, they'll wise up and get rid of me.
Yes.
Initiated into Junto Council this past Sunday.
Here, here.
Oh, thank you.
Huzzah.
Attended Scarrett Lodge on Tuesday.
And why did you attend Scarrett Lodge?
Yeah, why?
That would be unusual.
Terrible program.
2 reasons. Scott Helm's been after me for the last year and a half of his tenure as Worshipful Master to attend a meeting, but Jason Lewis was the speaker, so...
What? Oh, my
Yes.
God. We'll hear more about that in a minute.
Yeah, great program on the Odd Fellows. And Goose and Gridiron breakfast yesterday morning.
Yeah.
Which we won't get into
great
because,
breakfast.
Larry, you're
This is a perfect segue to Larry.
You're a schismist.
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 Schismist. Oh,
Schismist.
Schismist. Is that correct?
Well,
Let's ask the professor.
Larry
Schismatic.
Schismatic. Yeah.
Schismatic.
Larry Schismaris.
I like that. I like that. So, Larry, tell us about your week.
Well, kind of a quiet week, not a whole lot of lodge meeting.
Good thing we don't have a Holy Bible in here.
Last week. Goose and Gridiron. Some other things I've been working on with for our cause here, but I'm not going to go into that. But the lodge meeting was enough to create a lot of things happening.
Excitement,
yes, indeed.
Exploratory excitement.
So if you've ever been on a hike in the woods and stepped on a rotten log full of yellow jackets, that was Larry's week. So
I think it was referred to not as stepping on it, but something.
stepping in it.
Wow.
They're going to develop a pin for me. It's called a pissing on a hornet's nest pin.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And everybody knows me. I'm a quiet, meek, and mild individual.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jeez.
Always reticent to speak your mind.
Absolutely.
Yes. Jason, what have you been up to?
Well, as Jeff alluded to, I spoke at Scarrett Lodge and traveled with Jeff and brother Ken Hudson. That day was long. I left Lancaster and I drove to Harrisburg. So for those of you that aren't from here, that was a hour-long drive. And then I picked up Ken at Elizabethtown halfway on the way back home and drove to Scarrett, which was another hour and 20 minutes. And I drove Ken all the way home another hour and 20 minutes. And then I drove home another 30 minutes. So it was a long, long day. But the talk was good. Talked about Oddfellows and Freemasonry. Yeah. What?
You should have said you think the talk was good.
I got confidence.
I felt as though the talk was good.
Yeah.
Went well. It would be the
No, it was excellent.
Now, in all fairness, I was the second string pick because Brother Seth Anthony could not be there to talk about Oddfellows. So he wrote the majority of the program, and I studied and presented, and I asked him if I could interject my own slides, which I thought were funny, and I should have just left them out. But
The bathing suit slides did not go well, from what I understand.
But it was a good, and the reason that Brother Helm wanted us to go down and talk about the Oddfellows is because Scarrett Lodge has the distinct honor of being the longest continuous operating lodge in a single building. So they haven't moved or anything. They've been there for 150 some years. Like most of our buildings, it's an old Oddfellows building, and it still has some of the remnants and artifacts of Oddfellowship in plain sight. They're right in the room. So it was pretty neat. Aside from that, I conferred the first degree for Lamberton last night. Brother Larry Hudson let me practice some of the opening and closing, and it was a fun night. So that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Brother Ted, how about your week?
Well, last week I attended Lux Ex Tenebris Allied Masonic Degrees Council, and I think the event that I went to before that was the in-gathering right here in Ephrata Lodge.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you back, and now this time I'm actually conscious enough to hold conversation with you. When Ted was here for the in-gathering, I was under the weather, but trying to pull it together enough to pull off the food and the entertainment downstairs.
You were recovering, or you were visiting sciatica, correct?
I was in the Greek island of sciatica. Yeah, it was not a happy day for me. But since then, we had the Lodge in the Cave. I think we talked about the cave degree. And we had the Allied Masonic Degrees Junto Council meeting on Sunday last, where we inadvertently inaugurated Jeff Moyer into that council. And then performed a particular degree that's under the jurisdiction of the AMD Council. So go ahead, Jeff. You can talk.
No, Jack, I want to compliment you on that stain on your shirt.
Yeah.
It's been there for 15, 20 minutes.
I know.
I thought it was slobber, but it's not.
It's eventually going to evaporate, but it's not going to happen for a while. But thanks for pointing that out to the 3,000 or 4,000 people who are listening.
Yeah, they're watching online.
Yeah, they're watching online.
Remember, this is a guy that's a guest tonight filling in for Pete that we only allow him to make a phone call now and then.
Once in a while.
Wow.
So my big event was last night. We went down. I took 4 other guys from Ephrata Lodge down to Amicable St. John's Lodge in Cockeysville, Maryland. When I was master in 2009, I decided it was important that we see the work done elsewhere. So I picked at random this lodge in Cockeysville, Maryland. It turns out they meet at the Grand Lodge in the basement in one of the small rooms down there. And they were having a festive board. And special shout out to Bob Raskover, however Uncle Bob pronounces his name.
That rascal
Bob. And he is our new best listener. He has binged the entire 60 episodes, and I told him I'd give him a shout out. But thank you for all of the warm welcome from all of the folks at Amicable St. John's. It was a great night. A couple of people are just about waking up now. And it was all around a good time. And our guys got a nice taste of what it means to be in Maryland at a festive board. So that's been my couple of weeks. So Larry, I don't know. They're holding up signs. I'm not going to. What?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I do, and I failed to do this, and I apologize.
You do.
When I was
what do you do?
Just listen to me, will you please?
There's going to be a lot of that tonight.
Pray silence.
At the stated meeting on Tuesday, and it was gently reminded by
which stated meeting is that?
The one at Lamberton.
Thank you.
The fun meeting that we had. They actually made a motion to contribute $600 to Masonic Lite Podcast so that we could upgrade our equipment and so forth. It passed.
Oh, my God.
So we do have a gift from them of $600. And it was a great night, really, in that respect. So basically, we have a new mixer because of that.
Yeah, and we'll get that set up here shortly.
Yeah.
So I read a Facebook message or tweet or whatever the hell it was from the current master of Lambert and Lodge, and he said it right. He said, Freemasonry is on the verge of a new communication technology, and we want to support Masonic Lite's movement towards that new communication technology. And that was the reason why they did this. And we appreciate it beyond measure. And if any other lodges out there would like to do the same thing, we would be really happy if you did that. But in seriousness, I think, and I told Brother Ted, and we can talk about this a little bit later after the first break, we are moving into a new era of Freemasonry. And I think the new communication technologies are going to be a big part of that. So thank you, Lambert and Lodge, for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of technology, did you know that the Pennsylvania Academy of Masonic Knowledge actually streams their seminars? What?
Oh, yeah.
What? Yes, I did.
And we'll talk about that after break.
After break. Larry.
Break.
Run.
Why choose George J. Grove & Sons for your next home improvement project? At George J. Grove & Sons, we've built our reputation on quality and trust for more than 50 years. From planning to materials to installation, George J. Grove promises a home improvement experience second to none. Whether your goal is reducing energy costs, decreasing maintenance, updating curb appeal, or simply increasing the value of your home, the George J. Grove team will recommend and provide solutions that stand the test of time. Call 717-393-0859 for an estimate or visit us at georgejgrove.com. Welcome back, folks. Our guest tonight is Dr. Ted Schick, well known in Freemasonry throughout Pennsylvania. But I want to talk a little bit about him and then let him take over.
Yay.
Ted is the Doctor of Philosophy at Muhlenberg College. Now, this is really kind of neat because he graduated from Harvard. We have a Harvard graduate in this studio tonight. I mean, that's a first, probably be the last. So he graduated from Harvard with his undergraduate degree, went to Brown University, another Ivy League school, for his doctorate. He's also author of several books, many books actually, co-authored and authored.
Ted, when he screws this up, just jump in. Okay.
One of the books that he wrote was titled Doing Things, and you did that with another gentleman. Doing Things in Philosophy, that is a really...
Or doing philosophy at school.
Doing Philosophy. Did I write that down wrong?
Get your facts straight.
And there it is.
Yep.
Here's your sign.
Hey, we made it.
That won't be the last mistake.
We made it 60 minutes.
Wow. Another one which really, the title
60 seconds.
really catches you is How to Think About Weird Things, which is a critical thinking for the New Age philosophy. And, you know, how to think about weird things, that's going to sell a whole lot of books. Now, this is probably a classroom book, right?
Right. It's a logic critical thinking textbook.
Okay, it's a critical thinking textbook, but the title alone, it could go mainstream really easy.
Except for all those questions at the end.
Readings on Ted also branches out.
Damn quiz. Oh, no.
Ted also branches out and does he did one on the readings, and I think this is yours, readings on the philosophy of science, which is, again, another very interesting title. And obviously they cost like $200 a piece, so I haven't bought them. Ted also writes.
Are we going to let our guest talk at all?
Yeah.
Jesus.
But we were
Pete, can we get Pete to call in? Oh my God.
We were talking at dinner night that Ted does some special things like the philosophy of Seinfeld, The Matrix, some really interesting
Tell us about that, Ted.
Yeah. Ted is the...
Today.
all right.
Larry, today, please.
Masonically...
Jeff, take the book from him.
Jeff, shut up.
Today.
Please. Jeff, I mean...
I listen to your crap every Thursday morning.
All right.
Anyway, Masonically, he is a past master of the Pennsylvania Lodge of Research and a fellow. He's also
Did you say fellow or Othello?
Fellow. I didn't say Othello. All right. Pennsylvania Academy of Masonic Knowledge and a member of the Masonic Academy Committee. And a member and I think past master of Kite and Key Lodge in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
No, just a member, not a
past master. Yeah. Well, how did you miss that? Well, welcome, Ted. And we'll start off. Tell us a little bit about philosophy and Freemasonry. How in the world does that work?
Well, I wish I knew. This I know nothing, right? I mean, I guess that's how that works. But
that's philosophical too. So
right, and actually, I guess it was sort of the philosophical questions that got me interested in Masonry, as well as the fact that I think I'm about a fourth or fifth generation Mason. So the original Schick that came over from Germany in 1848 was a Mason, and there's a lot of Masonic symbols on his headstone and so forth.
A Mason when he came over, or a Mason here?
I don't know when he became a Mason, but he certainly he certainly died a Mason. But philosophically speaking, what got me interested in Masonry is the connection to Pythagoras. So, of course, we all know about Pythagoras, and we know that his Pythagorean theorem is demonstrated on the past masters' jewels here in our jurisdiction. And actually, but what I've found out is that in other jurisdictions, there's lectures that go into great detail about Pythagoras' contribution to Freemasonry. But, of course, Pythagoras is one of the great philosophers that ever existed. And he had a secret society. And so... like Socrates, he never wrote anything down, and everything that was passed down that we know about Pythagoras, we know by word of mouth. And so I wanted to see, just how much of Pythagoras is still left in Freemasonry, and so I joined.
And how much did you find?
There actually is a lot.
There is some. There is some, especially in other jurisdictions. Do you travel much outside of Pennsylvania?
Not a lot, but, I have traveled some.
When you get into the other jurisdictions, you'll find some winding staircase and 357s and all that sort of thing.
Bit. We have a 357 at the Allentown Masonic Temple, and that's because the temple was designed by somebody from Illinois. And so he didn't know about Pennsylvania Freemasonry.
I never been to a meeting, but I'll design your building for you.
I know first time I ever sat in Pennsylvania Lodge and listened to the Second Degree, I said, something's missing here, really. And I was raised in South Carolina, and we had the winding staircase and the liberal arts lecture, and it was probably one of the longer degrees back then. And what happened here? So, yeah.
So when you jumped into Pennsylvania Masonry, how old were you when you started? Had you already started your career as a college professor?
Yes, I don't know. I was late 30s, 40s, something like that.
Pretty typical for an adult man to jump in.
Yeah.
So how did that fit with your college curriculum at the time? Were you already teaching philosophy, or was this something completely separate from that?
Oh, yeah. So I was definitely teaching philosophy at the time, and was very interested in learning the Masonic connections, the Pythagorean connections, the whole bit.
Where do you see it fleshing out in today's Freemasonry? What can we look at and reflect back on and see Peter Gora in the work?
Well, I think that his attempt to understand the world through the use of reason is one of the fundamental tenets of Pythagoras that, of course, is present in all Masonic jurisdictions around the world. I mean, we are children of the Enlightenment, and one of the basic principles of the Enlightenment is that the way to acquire knowledge is by the use of reason. And Pythagoras thought, indeed, by the use of reason, we could come to know everything there was to know.
And how did that work out for him?
Well, you know how Pythagoras died, interestingly enough. So, and of course, we don't know whether this is true because everything we know about Pythagoras was written long after he was dead. But if you wanted to become a member of the Pythagorean Brotherhood, you had to turn over all of your earthly possessions to the Brotherhood and take a vow of silence for 5 years. And so then what you had to do is you had to listen to all the different teachers talk about the Pythagorean philosophy. And the Pythagorean philosophy is that everything is made out of numbers, interestingly enough. I mean, that's where the geometry stuff comes in. And so at the end of that 5-year period, then you take a final exam. And if you pass the final exam, well, you're admitted into the Brotherhood, and you can speak with the other members, and you can even speak with the master. If you fail the exam, what they do is they put a gravestone up in their graveyard with your name on it, and they actually give you back twice what you put in. So here's a way to double your net worth by just being silent for 5 years.
Larry, you're out. You can't have him.
Well, so
Not going to work.
Well, so anyway, what happened is one of these guys that had gone for 5 years failed the exam, and he was pissed off. And so he wanted to take it out on Pythagoras, and so Pythagoras was having dinner with some friends, and they went to a house and burned it down. And they actually stabbed the people as they were coming out of the house. And Pythagoras figured out what was going on. He went through the window. But now to understand how Pythagoras died, you have to understand another aspect of Pythagoras. So he was a vegetarian. And he was a vegetarian that didn't eat beans. So I don't know exactly what, I guess he was a wheat, German, honey sort of guy. I'm not sure exactly what.
Often
what
referred to as hungry.
Yeah, yes. That's right. And the reason that he didn't eat beans is because he thought that beans contained human souls. So if you...
And we're still following this guy 3,000 years later.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Well, so the next time you go to your salad bar, look at the little bean sprouts, right? Don't they look like little curled up fetuses or something like that, right?
Wow,
So,
no.
No
Not so
more
much.
chili.
Wow. That Mexican I had for lunch is just not the same.
so anyway, he believed in reincarnation, and he believed that there could actually be souls in things other than animals. He thought that there were souls in beings. So, all right, you got that part of Pythagoras. So you got the scene here. So this guy is burning down the house that Pythagoras is having dinner in. They're stabbing people as they come out the door. Pythagoras slides out the window, starts running down the streets, and they see him running down the streets, and so they start chasing him. And so he runs, and I guess he was a pretty sprightly guy. He was doing okay until he came to the end of the street, and you know what was there? A bean field.
Oh, this is too good.
So poor Pythagoras, didn't want to squash a bean, so he had to stop. They caught up with him and slit his throat. So something you don't learn in the Masonic lecture.
This is a cautionary tale for all you vegans out there. Eventually, you'll be chased down to a bean field.
Stop eating beans.
Stop eating beans immediately. Outstanding. So I haven't studied Pythagoras, so I can't specifically speak to Pythagoras. But you've also written some interesting things on thinking about thinking. How to think about how to think about weird things, right?
That would be how to think about Larry.
That would be chapter 3, Larry Maris. How did you come to write an entire book about it? It's really how to think, right? It's more than how to think about weird things. It's how to
Critical thinking.
So it's
critical
it's
thinking,
critical
right.
How to evaluate evidence, how to evaluate claims, how to decide what's believable and what's not believable, and so forth. And so I co-authored this book with Louis Vaughn, who is actually the editor of Prevention Magazine at the time. And so you may know Prevention Magazine from the grocery store and so forth, right at the checkout counter there.
It's right next to Cosmopolitan.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
And he wanted to know which sort of ads would be legitimate to put in here and which sort of ads are not legitimate to put in here. And so he asked around if anybody knew, if there was anybody that could inform him about, what makes something believable, what makes something unbelievable. And in fact, one of the people that worked for him was married to a sociology professor at Muhlenberg, and we had actually met at his house to discuss these sorts of issues, philosophy of science and all that sort of stuff. And she says, yeah, I think this Ted Schick guy knows something about that. And so we, talked about these sorts of things for a while, and after we had discussed it, we said, maybe we should put this into a book. And so we did, and so that's how the book came into existence.
And that's a textbook for a class specifically at Muhlenberg, or is it used elsewhere?
No, it's in its 8th edition now. It's actually been translated into both forms of Chinese. I didn't know that there were two forms of Chinese. There's a short
hundreds
form.
of forms of Chinese.
There's a short form and a long form. It's also been translated into Japanese. And apparently there's a bootleg copy in Farsi.
There you go.
So I actually got an email from a guy at the University of Tehran in Iran who wanted a copy of one of my articles that was not available on the web. And he said, could I please send him a copy? And so I sent him a copy of this article. And then he says, thank you for...
Just so you know, Ted's under observation with Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah.
She's being watched.
That's right. And so then he wrote back to me and said, well, thank you for sending me a copy of your article, and we really enjoyed reading your book in Farsi. And so I called up McGraw-Hill and I said, well, you didn't tell me that it has been translated into Farsi.
Not getting those checks? What?
And they said, well, we didn't translate it into Farsi.
Oh, fantastic. Well, really? So somebody bootlegged it in there.
So there's a bootleg copy of it out there somewhere.
Hey, that's a testimony, though. I mean, as much as, critically you'd like to get your recognition and obviously payment for work done, but it's a testimony that it's being translated into a language and into a country that is so closed to free thought and discernment, and that's kind of a cool issue. Do you want to take a quick break? Yeah. And all right, Larry says yes, so we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with more Ted Schick. So Larry, one of the things I really enjoy when I'm waxing philosophical is a good glass of wine and a fine cigar.
Yeah, me too. I could go for one right now.
I could too. Where would you go if you wanted a good glass of wine and a fine cigar?
I would, right here in Ephrata, I would go to that phenomenal bed and breakfast.
The Smithton Inn?
Yeah, the Smithton.
Because they're also selling Weathered Vineyards wines.
That's right. And DNS cigars.
What?
Yeah.
So we could have both.
Yeah, we could. And
if we opened the window that would possibly be installed by
George J. Groven.
So anyway, those are people who contribute to our show, and we love you very much.
Absolutely.
And we're back. So, Ted, I'm not... There's so many conversation strings that could come out of Ted Schick in a setting like this. I'm not really sure where to go next, because the rest of these plebes just don't understand the whole philosophical aspect of this thing. What?
I guess he just put us in our place.
But Jack, where could we go to get some good Masonic philosophy education?
Well, we could go to the Academy of Masonic Knowledge at Elizabethtown.
Wow, imagine that.
When is that happening?
The 27th, Saturday, the 27th of October.
Saturday, the 27th of October. Did they give us any money to plug their program?
No, they didn't. Ted, pass the word. We will gladly take money from the Grand Lodge.
Mercenary or some other improper motives. That's what I know.
If Pete Ruggieri's listening to this, no, we won't take any money from the Grand Lodge.
Grand Lodge.
That's a fact.
Yeah, we're good.
All right, no,
Which
we're good.
Grand Lodge?
Thank you very much.
Well, the Grand Lodge of Hawaii, if they're,
Yeah, I think it's.
So what do you feel is the state of philosophical conversation in Freemasonry today?
Well, if you look at the books that are being published on Masonry, there seems to be a fairly intense interest in the philosophical foundations of Freemasonry.
And that is it on a broad scale, or do you? Who do you think is participating in this?
It's hard to gauge how broad that is, but I think one of the most interesting developments is the result of research by people like Margaret Jacobs into how Freemasonry is probably more responsible than any other organization for spreading the ideals of the Enlightenment and so forth. And I think that it's those sorts of ideals that brought us together as a brotherhood. So those sorts of ideals that we still espouse to this day. And I remember going back to try to look at people who are doing dissertations on the influence of Masonry, and there's a large number of them.
And yet it's almost wholly excluded from let's call it secular history. Anything that's not Masonic in nature, like basic history, there's no mention of the fact that Harry Truman was a Mason outside of Masonic circles, or FDR, or really anybody, any of the Masonic history is lost.
Yeah, I mean, we even see pictures, of course, of George Washington with his apron on, but that and, Ben Franklin's contribution, I mean, even those things are not talked about very much.
Well, we are a secret organization. Remember that.
No, we're not. We have a float in the parade. We're not a secret. It's not a secret. No.
Oh, you mean the parade that didn't take place?
The parade that didn't happen,
okay.
Yes. It was very sad. We were very glad it rained, but that's a long story for another day. So do you see a change? Do you see it moving anywhere?
Yeah, I think I see people becoming more aware of the contribution of Masonry to, the spreading of Enlightenment ideas, especially in a time like this, where Enlightenment ideas are under attack and so forth. I think that people are coming to realize the value of these sorts of things.
And we hope that we can impress on some of the younger generation that's coming up through your classrooms that there's value in these kinds of institutions, that they're not just old guys who get together and I don't know. What do people think us old guys do? I didn't used to be an old guy. I'm an old guy now. I hate that.
You are your grandfather, too.
I am.
You eat beans.
And I eat beans.
Ted,
go ahead.
I have a question. Tell us a little bit about the philosophy of Seinfeld. I think our listeners would love to hear this.
Oh, God.
So as I say, the Philosophy of Seinfeld was the first book in the Philosophy and Popular Culture series that was started by Bill Irwin at King's College up in Wilkes-Barre. And he was a user of How to Think About Weird Things. And he came up with this idea, how about a book that deals with the philosophical issues in various aspects of popular culture? And so I get a call from Bill one day, and the first thing he says to me is, I'll bet you're a weird guy. And I said, well, that may well be the case. And then he told me his idea. He was thinking of doing a book on the philosophy of Seinfeld. And was there anything about it that I would be interested in writing about? And I think, the episode, the series had just ended. And, of course, the last episode was about, is doing nothing something. And so I said, well, I think that there's some good philosophical issues involved in that. And so I wrote an essay on the last episode in Seinfeld, is doing nothing something.
Yeah, well, doing nothing is something.
Yeah, right. So
that's what I do in retirement.
But it's all about good Samaritan laws. I mean, so do we have an obligation to help somebody if, for example, we can help them without putting ourselves in danger?
Exactly.
So what is our obligations to our fellow human beings? Now, I argued that, yeah, indeed, if you can help somebody without putting yourself in danger, then you have a moral obligation to do so. Yeah. But this is not a view that's held universally, that's for sure.
No, very true. Very true.
So, Ted, switching gears Masonically, one of the things that you're obviously heavily involved in is the Academy of Masonic Knowledge, hence a couple of our well-placed plugs. But could you tell us how you got involved with the Academy of Masonic Knowledge?
Well, I guess it was because of my involvement with the Pennsylvania Lodge of Research, and I was not an original member of the Academy of Masonic Knowledge, but people knew that I was interested in these sorts of issues, and there were some openings on the committee, and so I was invited to become a member of the committee and was pleased and honored to be invited. And so I served on the committee and then actually served as the chairman of the committee for a few years. And our goal, of course, is to try to bring Masonic scholars from all over the world to Pennsylvania to share their knowledge with the brothers. And that's what we've been doing since the beginning.
That's right.
And now we're streaming this live over the internet, and we not only filling up the auditorium in Elizabethtown, but we're getting a lot of people on the internet as well.
I actually was traveling, as I said last night, to Maryland. One of the guys in the car said, I've been going to this academy thing at Elizabethtown. I've been going for a lot of years, and when I first started going, there was like 10 guys in the audience. And now I'm fighting for a seat now. And it's a big theater, too.
Yeah,
that's great.
It is.
Recently remodeled and absolutely beautiful, by the way. If you haven't been there for a while, it is unbelievably
And
beautiful.
George is now outside the auditorium.
That's right. That's right.
Now, to have it watch the streaming, must you register?
No, I don't think so. No, you don't.
And I would assume that the registration at this point is to ensure that there's enough food and seats.
Correct.
That's really more than anything what it's about. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, you did.
So I don't have to register to watch it?
No, you don't have to register to watch it.
Okay.
But cautionary tale, apparently I broke the system the other day. They
Why am I not shocked?
They do the registration through Eventbrite. And I registered
4
when
times.
it first came out. Well, then I forgot I registered, so I registered again. And then just a couple of days ago, I keep getting these notices. And I guess I didn't register. I registered again. Well, the system is designed that you can only register once.
Or not.
Or not.
Unless you're Larry.
So I broke the system. And it was so noted by Brother Seth Anthony. And it made the internet and Facebook and everything else.
Yeah.
And, to say the least. So now they realize they have a problem with Eventbrite and their system. So
Thank you for helping them out, Larry. That was really
I
big
was
of you.
just more than happy to help.
Always on the job, Larry.
So how long have you been involved with Academy now?
Gee, I don't know, 6, 7 years, something like that, maybe.
I joined 4 years ago, and that's when I don't know if Master Builders was out before I came along, but Master Builders was a big push, and obviously Academy of Masonic Knowledge or Lodge of Research. And I mean, ever since I've been involved, you've been kind of the master of ceremonies the day of the seminars. So is that your main role at this point, or what do they have you doing?
Right. So I'm happy to do that when they want me to do it, and I'm happy not to do it if they don't want me to do it. Yes, indeed.
I first met Ted several years before that. I joined the Pennsylvania Lodge of Research when you were there, and I think you had Postlethwaite was the worshipful master at the time, and I think you had already preceded him, if I'm not mistaken. And I got to know him in a Masonic way, but never really sat and talked like we are tonight.
Not in the biblical way.
He got off easy. Anyway, and I've known him for a number of years, and then of course I gravitated to the Academy as well. And just let me say, and I hope you say this too, Pennsylvania is very unique in having an Academy of Masonic Knowledge and a phenomenal lodge. And he's part of it.
You should all move to Pennsylvania.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, the PA Academy of Masonic Knowledge gets accolades from all over the world. I mean, and certainly when you had on our contemporaries, the Masonic Roundtable guys, that was huge. And I think that was the first time that it was streamed. Is that correct?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, their shows, and especially around that time, I mean, the comments were just pouring in from all over the country and the world, really, about how great that was.
Well, I think our Pennsylvania Academy is also probably one of the top in the world as well. Being a member of that and also a member of the correspondence circle for Coronati in England. I mean, I went to their meeting in England, and I'm telling you what, Pennsylvania Lodge of Research is just phenomenal.
Is that the one you fell asleep
All right,
in?
we will establish that Pennsylvania is fabulous, and everybody else should strive to be like us. So, Ted, tell us more about...
I was going to ask Ted.
I'm getting nice.
You met him years ago, according to Larry, and yet you still showed up tonight. So I tip my hat to you.
Oh, my gosh.
So, Ted, as Jack led into the next question.
I didn't know where I was actually going, but thank you, Jeff, for separating that out. And I'm going to have to make this up as I go along. So apparently you're not aware that as a professor at Muhlenberg College, you have a 4.7 rating at rateyourprofessor.com.
So you told me that. I make a practice not to read that.
There was one review that said, "This guy is a god." I swear to you, it's on the website.
You shouldn't say stuff like that.
It is so on the website. So what is it about your class that you think people enjoy to that level? Because I went to college many years ago, and man, not so much.
Well, see, so we have these evaluations that students have to fill out at the end of every semester, and I can't say that I'm all that impressed with those evaluations. so I don't know what evaluations you're looking at.
Well, apparently the online world has it very different. So what is your class like at Muhlenberg? I don't know.
So it's it's a combination of lecture and discussion, and so. The way that you learn how to critically think is to get your ideas out there and let people take them apart.
So talk more, if you would, a little bit about that, because a lot of us who are now Masons and have been Masons for a while and are starting to awaken to this idea of critically thinking. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of new, right? I think I told you before the show, I just finished, or I'm finishing a book called How to Read a Book. Which was written in the 30s, but it's changed the way I read a book now. And how do you think has to be the same kind of thing. So how do you teach your students?
Right. Although, it is, logic is one of the original 7 liberal arts.
Right.
So it's been around for a while. And so,
but it's not taught so much anymore. I mean,
right. Well, in every philosophy class, every philosophy department has a logic course and so forth. We used to divide these courses into what we called formal logic, in which you would actually do proofs of the sort that they do in mathematics, except there would be letters. There would be P's and Q's and R's instead of numbers and all that sort of stuff. But so logical proof follows a very particular form, and you have to learn the forms, and you have to learn the ways that you can transform one string of symbols into another string of symbols and so forth. And so this is what computer languages, for example, are based on. So most people who go into computer science are going to have to take a course in logic because that's what computers do, is they logically manipulate symbols.
And speaking of symbols, do we have anything from our resident symbologist tonight?
Do we?
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's go to...
I think we do.
Well, let's go to break, and we'll hopefully listen to that.
We'll listen to a symbol.
Unlocking Symbols by symbologist Michelle Snyder. The Golden Key Unlocked. Once there was a young boy who lived with his poor mother on the edge of the woods. In the winter, he had to go out into the forest and fetch wood for the fire. One very cold day, after looking for a long time, the boy decided he should build a small fire and warm himself a bit before returning home. Digging into the snow for sticks, he discovered a golden key. Where the key is, the lock must also be, he thought to himself, and dug down into the cold dirt. At last, he discovered an iron box, but no keyhole could be seen. After examining it closely, he found a very tiny hole. He put the key in, and it fitted perfectly, so he turned it to open the box. Symbology is like this golden key. Symbols hold within them secrets, which are easily found if one has the right key. When the key to decoding symbols is learned, for it is not a physical key, it unlocks all sorts of good things. Keys are in themselves symbolic of mystery, secrecy, discretion. A key can indicate ownership or release. Because it both locks and unlocks, it represents the bearer's power to confine or set free. They represent the way in or the way out. The key to the city is given only to the important and powerful. The key is a symbol for Janus, the god who sees all past and future and guards the gate into the real world. With his key, he opens the door of the sky to release dawn. Keys can represent forbidden knowledge or authority. If there are 3 keys, they symbolize the number of secret chambers full of precious objects, those of initiation and knowledge. In Masonic symbolism, the key is often the jewel of the office of the treasurer. So you see, the golden key which the boy has found, and with which he opened the box, will change his wretched life if he understands what is inside the opened box. That the box is iron and the key is gold tells us so. To obtain the key to the world of symbols is not a simple nor quick process, but it is truly golden, for it opens the box of history and mystery. The first lesson of the key is to know which lock it fits. Like the written word, symbols must be understood in the context of their use. That is, discovering the who, what, when, where, how, and why it exists, and they must be compared to other symbols that are the same or similar. Once the key is found, the realm of mysteries and myth will whisper its secrets to the one who matches the key to the lock. Mythology, folklore, fairy tales, and poetry also contain symbolic language into which to fit a golden key. Next time, we will unlock secrets in the fairy tale Snow White.
Good news, everyone!
Masonic Light News. News not fit to print.
In Masonic news today, the craft was thrown into great confusion when a Grand Lodge of Arkansas discovered a slice of un-Masonic bread on the 3rd floor of the Grand Lodge of that jurisdiction. Masonic charges are pending those responsible for this heinous act, and when discovered, they will be Masonically dealt with. That's the Masonic news. So mote it was.
So we just listened to Michelle Snyder, who so graciously has provided us with some tidbits of symbology, and we'll post a link to the old episode that she was on, which was absolutely phenomenal. To quote our friends in Australia,
so crushing on Michelle. By the way,
that was a great show.
You remember all that?
And we heard the news about some unsanctioned bread. I don't know where.
No, stop.
I don't know where that inspiration came from.
I don't know.
See, I thought you wanted me saying we're back with Ted, and he was going to start with
Oh,
his.
you think it was that easy? No, you weren't.
That's all right. That's all right. Repeat.
Jeff, it's okay. We'll dock your pay. It's fine.
So we're still here with Ted.
Give me the keys to the car.
Oh man, this is falling apart.
So I'm gonna take over the TED side of this because we're gonna have it. He and I are going to have a TED Talk.
How about
okay?
A TED Talk. Yes, a TED Talk.
All right.
How about he brings us back and thanks Michelle?
We're already back, Larry. Go to
Larry.
sleep.
Look at the screen. I got you a screen to see what's going on.
So,
I didn't know
Ted,
you were
it's important that you understand
recording.
that this is the cutting edge of Masonic communication technology.
The edge is dull.
Okay. That's like beating on a rock. It's terrible. So during the last break, we kind of talked a little bit. I fancy myself a sort of philosophically inclined. I'm not a philosopher. But I do think about
You're
thinking.
a philanthropist.
Don't start with me. So, but I can't even pretend to think logically about things, the way you're talking about thinking logically about things, like in referencing computer code, and philosophy and computer code being similar. And I know you wrote a book about philosophy in the Matrix, and I mean, I can't even start to wrap my arms around that. Help me as a layman to get my arms around that. Where would you tell me to start thinking about that?
Well, so I don't know if you want to start thinking about formal logic, but you use logic all the time. I mean, so when you try to figure out why your car doesn't start, when you try to figure out what that noise that you heard was, and so forth. I mean, so there's a procedure that you use. It's called inference to the best explanation, and you do it naturally. And so all our book tries to do is to try to hone those sorts of skills that we all learn from birth. You know, how to decide what's reasonable to believe, how do we decide what's not reasonable to believe, how do we decide what's a good explanation, how do we decide what's a bad explanation. So we don't, the formalist stuff is important, and of course you do need to know it if you're going to write computer code, but to get along in the world, you don't have to necessarily know the symbolic form of this sort of stuff. You just have to know how it works.
Is it natural for us to think that way, or do we have to think above our natural selves in order to think through that sort of logic?
Right. Well, that's a great question. And indeed, we do have to think through ourselves, because we all use what are called heuristics, which are like rules of thumb, which we use to come to conclusions when we're, faced with certain sorts of evidence. But some of these heuristics, and although they often will lead us in the right direction, they can lead us astray. And so one of the things that the book tries to do is to make you acquainted with the sort of heuristics that we use to reason about everyday affairs. Realize when those heuristics can go wrong so that you can catch yourself before you fall into a trap.
And you've used the word heuristics 5 times. I was counting. Help me break that down for me.
So heuristic is just a rule of thumb. It's just sort of a principle that we apply to things to help us make sense of it, like the representativeness heuristic, like causes like.
Oh, sure. Jeff, jump right in.
Okay. and we're back, Ted. Okay.
Yeah, right.
So heuristic to me is intuitive.
Yeah, right. So we have sort of intuitive rules of thumb built into our cognitive apparatus that helps us make sense of the world, but they don't always work. I mean, like the representativeness heuristic, which says that like causes like. And so when we see one thing like another, we might say, for example, infer the same cause. So for a long time, people thought that ulcers must have been caused by stress or tension, because the sort of feeling that you get in your gut when you're tense or under stress is sort of similar to the sort of feeling that you have when you have an ulcer.
Sure.
That comes from the representativeness heuristic, and stress has nothing to do with ulcers.
And it is 100% wrong.
Yeah, it's 100% wrong. Ulcers come from a bacteria. It has nothing to do with stress. But, we're just so used to making those sorts of connections between things that, and they usually work, but sometimes they don't. And it's good to know that these sorts of principles are at work, and once you're aware of them, then you can avoid making mistakes.
And those logical assumptions have been with us for thousands of years, right? Aristotle is the best example of erroneous logical assumptions that we followed for thousands of years.
Right. Well, Aristotle's things were not sort of these built-in cognitive biases. He had some actual theories about the world which were just mistaken.
Right. But we followed them forever.
But we did follow them
to our detriment in many cases.
And I'm sure that there are still a lot of people out there who think that heavy things fall faster than lighter things.
Sure.
And that's what Galileo proved wrong.
That's when Larry fell down off the dock in Amsterdam, I think.
So, Galileo actually never threw anything off the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So he was actually able to prove Aristotle wrong simply by performing a thought experiment.
Wow. And that was...
Wow.
So he reasons, so he's sitting in his easy chair there, and he says, now suppose we got a cannonball and suppose we have a musket ball. So you would think that the cannonball would fall faster than the musket ball. And people think that, well, what he did is he went to the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa and he threw them off and they landed at the same time. No, he didn't do that. He said, no, I tell you, think about this. He says, suppose we take a cannonball and we attach it to a musket ball by a rope. Okay. And then we throw the cannonball musket ball system off the leaning Tower of Pisa. At the same time, we throw just a cannonball by itself. So you got the picture, we got a cannonball musket ball system and just a cannonball. And so the question is, which is going to fall faster, the cannonball or the cannonball musket system? And so what Galileo pointed out is that, well, you would think, since the cannonball musket ball system weighs more than the cannonball alone, that the cannonball musket system would fall faster. But then Galileo realized, but, the musket ball is going to be a drag on the cannonball in the cannonball musket system. And since that drag is going to make the cannonball musket ball system fall slower than the cannonball, it's going to be the case that the cannonball musket ball system is both going to fall faster and slower than in cannonball alone. Galileo realized that that was impossible, and modern science was born. And he never had to leave his armchair.
Okay, when we're all done here, can someone sweep up my brain and just carry it out to my car, please? So I've actually been to Venice or Pisa,
right.
Pisa, and I've also been to Florence, and I've been to the Galileo Museum,
right? And I have too.
And I saw the ball rolling down the ramp thing, and my head exploded there too.
Did you see his middle finger encased in oil?
I did. I thought of Larry Maris at the time. Yes, I did.
They preserved that.
Yes, Larry, it was that finger. Yes, it was. That was a wave to the local authorities at the time. So, is there anything that you would like to contribute? Something you'd like to add to this mess that you've been a part of tonight?
No, I think you've covered my books. I don't need to do any more shameless self-promotions.
Oh, yeah. No, do it. That's why we're here. That's all right.
Attend the Academy of Masonic Knowledge. We've got 2 great speakers.
And when would you say that Academy of Masonic Knowledge is going to happen?
October 27th.
And that would be what day? Saturday. Saturday, October 27th.
At the Masonic Village.
At where is that?
Cultural Center in Elizabethtown,
Pennsylvania. All right.
Ted, we should just take a brief second to talk about the scholar program, through Academy of Masonic Knowledge. Could you tell us? Could you give
absolutely.
us the 60-second pitch about how that works?
I am one.
Yeah, so Larry.
He was talking to Ted. Not
so I'm
you.
actually not a Masonic scholar. So
really?
So Larry could probably give.
Well, I'm a level 1. I never went to 2 and 3.
Yeah, three is when you get to call
believe
yourself.
Believe it or not,
you look like number 1 to us, Larry.
Years ago,
I was thinking
writing
more like
it
number
up
2.
is just.
Go back to sleep, Larry.
Okay.
But I think we are one of the few jurisdictions. In fact, I'm not aware of any other jurisdiction in the country that has a program like that. And so it's an opportunity to study Masonry and to get recognized for the amount of studying that you've done. There's 3 different levels. And then to get a Master Masonic Scholar recognition, you actually have to write a little dissertation on some aspect of that. And one of the original plans is that the people who have gone through the Master Masonic program and have written their dissertation can then give it at the Pennsylvania Lodge of Research and can have it published in the Transactions.
All right. From time to time. I'm going to throw this out there.
I did the reverse. I did the dissertation at the Lodge of Research, and I'm allowed to use that dissertation when I finally get my paperwork in for level 3.
There you go.
That said, you have to be a Pennsylvania Mason to participate in that program.
Right. We just don't have the manpower to.
So anyone from outside of Pennsylvania who would like to become a Pennsylvania Mason, that's EphratahLodge665.org. just drop us an email. You're good.
But
now they can visit the actual academy by letting us know they're coming. They don't have to be a member. You have to be a master.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't even have to be a master Mason. It's open.
And they can stream
just let us know who's coming.
And they can stream it on the internet.
And you can go online to PA Academy of Masonic Knowledge and register.
Yes.
Now, I would
very solid.
Like to mention that even if you are out of state, and even if you don't have an interest in participating in the program, which is, it's a series of book reviews and educational programs, and you tally your points and you get your level, and then when you hit the Master Scholar level, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're eligible to wear a jewel to all your Blue Lodge functions and show that off. But there's a series of recommended readings that's actually quite an extensive list of Masonic readings. So if you are listening...
Where can we find that, Jason?
You can find it at the Pennsylvania Academy of Masonic Knowledge's website, which I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but I will put it in the show notes.
Boom.
Well, Ted, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for having me.
Will you come back?
It's been fun. Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Wow.
That's good.
So
We didn't ruin Ted. Yay!
we, I guess we should think about going home. But before we go home, we should say thank you to some of our valued listeners, right? And our valued advertisers.
We have listeners.
Wow, thank you to all of our listeners, obviously.
I think what we do is also, I think we brought it up earlier in the program. We want to thank Lamberton Lodge for that gracious, magnificent $600 contribution.
And I think in addition to that, and that is fantastic, and they recognize what it is that we're trying to do, and that is bring in a new communication technology to the fraternity. If your lodge, as you're listening to this, might consider this, please feel free, jump on our Facebook page, jump on our website, masoniclite.org, I think is our Facebook page, right?
We have a GoFundMe.
Our Facebook page. Our Facebook page is
our
Masonic Light
website
Podcast.
is www.masoniclite.com.
.com.
Yep.
And make sure you visit Masonic Scarves because Pete's running a nice program that you can donate to Masonic Light and get a scarf, so that's wonderful.
Also, GoFundMe. We're up and running with that.
And we do have a GoFundMe page. That is true. So anything you can do to help us out, we appreciate it very much.
It does cost. I hate to say it. We hate to be like PBS, but it costs money to make this program go.
It does.
We have monthly expenses.
We got to pay people like Ted this ridiculous fee to come here, and we got to pay his airfare and his hotel. Ted, thank you for coming very much.
Thank you for having me.
Very enlightening. Just look forward to just picking your brain a little further because mine is empty. So,
but we're not done yet.
What?
No, we got to talk about what's going on, and then we got to talk about going home, and
we got to go bring the chickens in.
All right. So, Ted, why don't you tell us what's going on in your Masonic career coming up in the next couple of weeks?
I'll be attending Kite and Key Lodge, number 811, Traditional Observance Lodge in Allentown, PA, the third Wednesday of each month.
And a new date change, right? It used
to be the fourth. They changed it to the third.
Wonderful.
Larry, what do you got going on? Thank you, Larry. Jeff, what do you?
Well, can I go, Larry?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so tomorrow, Lodge 43 is conducting a one-day class for, is it 11?
Yep, and by the time you hear this, it would have already happened, but that's okay.
It'll be 11 first responders, but there's some others.
Police, first responders.
So Sunday, I have a 14th degree rehearsal at Valley of Lancaster.
I'll be there with you.
Tricolor Lodge Monday night. Lancaster County Scottish Rite Club with the Reading Consistory Seafood Night Tuesday night at Shady Maple. Lodge 43 stated meeting, my first meeting I'll attend since January.
Wow.
8th degree rehearsal Thursday night, and then Friday, October 12th, the Valley of Reading's holding their Feast of Tishri. Larry, you're one of my three personal guests.
Yeah.
And then I'm off for about a week. I'm going up to Deerfoot for a week archery hunting. So
there you go.
How about you, Jack?
Your wife going with you?
For me,
no.
Got stated meeting on Tuesday. Effort of Lodge 665. Come out and see us. Dinner at 6, meeting at 7. We are having our Lodge Memorial Evening, where we are recognizing the 400 Masons who have passed away since our last Memorial Evening in October. Guys, it is we are at the peak of losing the baby boom. So keep that in mind at your fraternity. There are widows and orphans who need your help. So just consider it. It's what we're doing at our meeting on Thursday. We also have an entered apprentice who will be joining the fraternity on Thursday following. So beyond that, I have no idea.
My turn?
No. Yes. Go.
Well, I'll be at the majority of the events that Jeff has talked about with our Blue Lodge because we're in the same Blue Lodge. However, if you were hoping to come visit, if you're local, just keep in mind that those things already happened. Catch us next month by the time you hear this episode. But some things that are coming up, obviously, October 27th, we have the Academy of Masonic Knowledge. Visit the Pennsylvania Grand Lodge or the PA Academy Masonic Knowledge website. We'll have those in our show notes. The day after, October 28th, the 42nd Masonic District is doing their Gettysburg degree, which got rescheduled. So there may be some tickets left over for that because of the rescheduling. So, you can reach that by the 3rd Masonic District in Pennsylvania. At the Reading Masonic Center on November 10th, thanks to our listener, Steve Shimp. He asked if we could plug this, so here we are. They're having a casino night to benefit their Children's Dyslexia Center. And
That's the 7th Masonic District.
Oh, I read that wrong. The 7th Masonic District Chips for Charity event, and the proceeds will benefit Children's Dyslexia Center. November 10th, 2018. Of course, looking in the future, in December, we have the Grand Lodge Pennsylvania Quarterly, which is always a fun event, but it's extra special because it will be in our backyard. And
what?
Yep. And we have the Lancaster Lodge of Perfection reunion coming up, and also we have that in Reading and Harrisburg and all of our respective valleys. So if you are looking to join the Scottish Rite, it's typically reunion season in the Northern Masonic jurisdiction, at least. So I think that is
October 16th for Lancaster.
October 16th. So this show will be out hopefully in time to hear that. And then we have November 16th and 17th in several jurisdictions or several valleys in Pennsylvania. Ted, are you in the Valley of Valentine?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. And that your reunion is
first week in November sometime.
Yeah,
I think they have theirs the first Saturday in November.
Right.
Don't quote me on that, but
I love reunions.
Yeah. By the way, Larry, I have to get you an 8th degree ritual.
I'm waiting. Yeah.
Once you get transferred officially to Reading.
Well, everybody, welcome Larry back to the Scottish Rite. All is kicking and screaming. We finally got
welcome back, Larry.
And he accidentally joined a chapter in York. Right? Yes, he did.
Yes, I did.
That check cleared. Yeah.
Well, we should pause in our deliberations so we can cue the chickens.
Special thanks to Effort Lodge 665 for continuing to make this studio available to us.
Heck yeah.
Thanks to Jason Lewis, our producer, who always makes the show listenable.
Hell of a guy.
And as Ted Schick can attest, you have no idea what goes on here during this recording session.
Such a mess. Oh, you.
And when he listens to it, he's going to be greatly surprised. Special thanks to our news director, Jack Harley, who can always pull a rabbit out of his hat. Our Masonic Lite podcast complaint operator, Xavier Breath. And also
oh, that's a win.
It's a good one, yeah. Anyway, I do appreciate it. We did go back to our old law firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. They gave us a good price, and we're not going to ignore it. And we may have some need to use them shortly.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, listen. Thanks for listening. This is Larry Maris.
Jeff Moyer.
Not Pete Ruggieri.
Repeat, Jeff Moyer.
Pete, we miss you. This is Jason Lewis.
We love you, man. It's Jack Harley. See ya.
And Ted Schick.
There he is.
So, do you guys have a way to gauge how many listeners you have worldwide?
Oh, don't answer that, Larry.
So, according to Larry, we have 47,000 listeners on 3 planets.
Oh, okay.
No.
Here's George Jetson.
According to SoundCloud, we have a measurable.
You've been listening to the Masonic Lite Podcast with brothers Pete Ruggieri, Larry Maris, Jason Lewis, Jack Harley, and me, your dulcet-toned announcer, Brian Hill. Listen to all our episodes on our website, www.masoniclight.com, or via your favorite podcasting service.